Hello, Billy.
Morning, Salty. With only 6 rounds to go in the competition, it's getting towards the business end of the season, and with players leaving clubs and clubs offering players to look elsewhere, it just reminds you that it is a business, isn't it? And the North Queensland Cowboys asking Valentine Holmes to leave, or giving him permission to look elsewhere, and then Stefano Utoikamanu taking up a clause in his contract to move clubs. It certainly is a business, isn't it?
Absolutely. This run to September, and we'll talk about those other stories in just a moment, but this run to September and the finals, you get the feeling it is going to go right down to the wire. Teams will take points off each other. There's only a few locks at the moment for the top 8, and we'll talk about those at the top of the table in just a moment. But what about this logjam that we've got at the moment?
Well, the team sitting in 6th or the 5th place is only 3 wins ahead of the team sitting in 14th place. Teams have still got to have buys, and some teams have used all their buys. It's going to be a race in the next month and a half, and there's a few teams that I feel have got a favourable draw, and there are a few teams that are sitting behind the 8 ball right now and have got to get a wriggle on, but also have got to have some results go their way. The Broncos in particular, I look at the Broncos and the Titans. Can you believe after 6 rounds the Titans had not won a game, and now they're sitting on equal points as the Broncos? It's quite the story, and I'm sure we'll dive into it.
Well, just on the Titans, Billy, and I called the game on the weekend where they really gutsed out a good win over the Dolphins. You go back to some of those games in the middle part of the season where it started to click under Des Hasler, games that they lost in controversial circumstances or golden point or just tight losses. You throw a couple of them in and they're in the mix for the 8. This is a massive game on Saturday now as they take on the Broncos, and they'll fancy their chances, the Gold Coast, to get another win.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I feel the first 6 weeks of the competition, the Gold Coast just really missed the start. They didn't look like a football team at all. And then they went through a period of about a month of football where they didn't win any games, but they were really competitive, and you could see the signs of improvement in their footy team. And now they've gone on their run. So I'm sure they'll look back at this season and think what could have been. They lost their captain and star player in Tino Fa'asuamaleaui very early in the season. AJ Brimson's been injured quite a fair bit, and also young Campbell's spent time out of the team as well with injury. So, they've had their fair share of unfortunate incidences, but at the end of the day, you make your own luck in this game, and Des Hasler's certainly starting to have an impression on this team, and they're starting to work in unison, and they're growing as a footy team. So it can't be too far away.
On the other hand, where there's positive signs for the Titans, the Broncos, 42,500 people turned up to see them play the Bulldogs on Saturday afternoon. And let me tell you, there was probably less than half of that in the stands at Suncorp when the game finished. Where to now for Brisbane, Billy?
Well, they've got to hope now. They've got to win the rest of their games. They've got to get their own backyard in order first to give themselves a chance. But they've got to rely on other teams to fall over, things to go their way. It's been a tough season for the Broncos. They've had their fair share of injuries, and they really didn't cope when Adam Reynolds tore his bicep. He's only just come back, and it's been a tough season for the Broncos. Look, I look at the Bulldogs, and I think the Broncos can learn a lot from the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs on the weekend showed the Broncos how to play consistent footy, and it all starts with your defence. The Bulldogs have got the second best defence in the competition. They're one of only 2 teams that have conceded less than 300 points to date in this season, and they average 16 points against them each game. That's where it all starts. The only other team that are better than them in that department is the 3-time premiers in the Panthers. There's no secret to success, and Cameron Ciraldo's done a great job. They've worked really hard on the defensive side of their game, and now that they've got that in their kit bag, they're starting to work on their attack. And They're doing a lot right, the Bulldogs. It's no fluke that they're sitting in 5th position, and it looks like they're going to play finals. And it just looks to me like the Broncos have flipped that, and they've forgotten about that effort side of the game and that defensive side of the game. They've got so much brilliance in their team, and we know what they're capable of. We saw that last year, and we've seen glimpses of it this year. But if you don't defend well, you won't give yourself a consistent chance to win games of footy in this competition. And you need to be consistent, because the season goes for 27 weeks. And if you're not consistent, you'll find yourself in the position the Broncos are in.
There was a couple of moments in that game against the Bulldogs, Billy, where thought, okay, there's a moment that could spark the team. Katoni Staggs provided a couple of them. One was putting pressure on Connor Tracy on a kick chase, forced an error. Another one was he put one of the Bulldogs players into touch. But then it didn't lift the team. Is that more than a form or confidence issue? Do we have to delve deeper into the roots of the problem, or will the next 6 weeks tell us?
Yeah, look, I think if you're relying on one particular moment to lift a team, or a big play to lift a team, that's when you're not in a good place. You need to have that consistent effort. Every moment is important in the game. It's not a big moment that lifts your team, or an intercept that'll turn the game. Sure, that might happen on occasions, but it's the consistent effort that the Bulldogs are doing, for instance, that the Panthers always do, that the Melbourne Storm always do, that put you in a position every week to be in the contest. And if you're not putting in those consistent efforts all the time, and it takes a collective 17 when you take the field. It's not 12, it's not 13, it's got to be a collective 17, putting in all those little efforts in the hard parts of the game, not the flash parts of the game, the hard parts of the game. Simplify it, and that's when you play your best footy. And the Broncos do that on occasions. And when the Broncos are on, they're on defensively. They're on in the effort parts of the game, and then they give themselves the chances to open up the field. And you've got Katoni Staggs and Herbie Farnworth, Selwyn Cobbo, all these great players. They get those opportunities off the collective effort from the team.
Their opponents on the weekend, the Bulldogs, when we talk about run of the finals, they're not just looking at making the 8. They're looking at pushing into the top 4 and giving this competition a real shake. And isn't it great to see the Blue and White Army, their supporters coming out of the woodwork and getting behind their team so passionately?
Well, 2004 was their last premiership, and they've had some dark days. They've had some tough days. And it makes the good days all the more enjoyable. And there are so many Bulldog supporters out there with being optimistic about this season. Defence wins premierships. Defence wins premierships, and we've seen that over the history of the competition. Every now and again, you'll get that'll get flipped on its head, like the West Tigers back in 2005, but very rarely. And you defend well, and you defend consistently, and that'll help you in the finals. That'll give you a chance. And, they're as much chance as anyone to make the top 4 in this competition, because we've seen how tight the competition is. There's a few teams up the top of the ladder that are streaking clear, but everyone else, they're fighting for positions. And if the Bulldogs can make that top 4, they'll give themselves a great chance, to push towards that last game in the competition.
Billy, the top of the table, the Melbourne Storm, and we saw their victory against Parramatta at CommBank on Friday night. And what was the stats there again? 39 play the balls Parramatta had in Melbourne's opposition 20, or Melbourne's 20. Melbourne had just one play the ball in Parramatta's 20-metre zone. An amazing defensive effort, amazing effort, and Cameron Munster back, so things are looking good for the Storm.
Yeah, I was looking at the team sheet, and you had Ryan Pappenhausen, Harry Grant, Jerome Hughes starting the game, and if that wasn't dangerous enough, you had Sua Fa'alongo and Cameron Munster sitting on the bench to wait to come on. And what a luxury for Craig Bellamy and the Melbourne Storm to have so much strike in their team, and so many good players that can create stuff. Look, that stat that you just mentioned, it tells me two things. And the obvious one is the defence. The goal line defence and the effort that Craig Bellamy puts into that part of the game. There's no secret around that. And the other one is they've got a dangerous footy team, the Melbourne Storm, and they can score from anywhere. Will Warbrick ran for over 300 metres, created line breaks. They're willing to use the football out of their own end, which makes them really dangerous. And it says to the opposition, well, if you're willing to tighten up your line and make it hard for us to get out of our own end, we've got the ability to go around you as well. So if you're not careful, we'll go around you. And then when you do pull a bit of width, we'll go through you. It's a great model to work with, and they're doing a lot right. They're very consistent. I think they've won 7 in a row now, the Melbourne Storm. And, it's no secret that, Craig Bellamy, Ivan Cleary, these top-line coaches, they keep it very simple for their team, and they allow the talent to shine off the back of hard work.
Mentioning Ivan Cleary, son Nathan, 26 points against the Dragons on the weekend. He's second game back from his hamstring injury, and Nathan's looking really good.
Well, if he's second game back from a hamstring injury and he scores 3 tries, he sets 2 up. He had 32 runs. He had 32 runs on the weekend. He ran for nearly 300 metres. They're incredible. He's the halfback of this team. He's not an outside back, carrying the football. He's not a front rower that gets these sort of metres. It's a halfback we're talking about. He just makes such a difference to the team. He sets them up with his kicking game. He's always in the game. He's got his hands on the footy all the time, and they keep losing players every year, the Panthers. But while Nathan Cleary's there, and while they're all willing to work as hard as they have over the last 4 years, they would have to be the favourites to win the competition.
All right. They're certainly looking good, the Penrith Panthers at the moment. Let's get on to a couple of stories mentioned at the top of our podcast this week. Now, Billy, Stefano Utoikamanu has said that he is leaving the West Tigers. He's informed the club that he is leaving. The Storm have been one club that's been mentioned. There's been a couple of others as well. He'd be a handy pickup.
Yeah, he would. He's a young up-and-coming front rower, and Stefano just mustn't be able to see the light bright enough at the end of the tunnel at the Tigers. That's to me, that's what it comes down to. There sure is a light there. You've got Jerome Luai going to the club. You've got Sunia Taruva heading there as well. So, there is some excitement and some things to look forward to for West Tigers fans. But yes, Stefano mustn't be able to see that. For him to ignite a clause in his contract to exit the club, it just goes to show that it is a business, and everyone's got to treat it like that now. It's hard to feel that attachment to players and clubs when this stuff happens, and I'm sure we'll talk about Val Holmes in a minute. And this is a player asking to leave a club. Well, clubs do it as well, so you can't be disgruntled to the player. Who picks him up? I've heard the Bulldogs are interested, and I've heard the Melbourne Storm. By all reports that the Melbourne Storm have had a couple of conversations with Stefano. They've been in the market for a front rower in the past. So he'd be a wonderful pickup. He's a very talented young front rower, and unfortunately for the Tigers who have brought him through, they're not going to see the benefits of Stefano as he develops into one of the elite front rowers in the game.
A fairly handy record, Melbourne, too, of picking up young forwards and older forwards as well, and turning them into success stories as well over the years. That interview process, it's not a straightforward one, though, for him, is it, to get to Melbourne? Yeah,
it'd be interesting. I know that they do touch on the character of people and their work ethic. I think first and foremost, I don't know Stefano Utoikamanu at all. I only watched him play. So, if the Melbourne Storm have gone deep into negotiations, it tells you that there is a character there that they like. You have to have a look at. You only have to have a look at, Eli Katoa, Josh King. These sort of players. Sean Bloor. Within 12 months has gone from a fringe first grader to one of the elite back rowers of the competition. And you could go back to 2 decades ago when Craig Bellamy was doing this with young forwards and Brian Norrie and these sort of guys that have had their time in the NRL and looked like that it was finished, and all of a sudden he brings them back in and gives them a simple role, and they feel valued to the team, and they hold trophies up at the end of the year. It's an incredible strike rate that Craig Bellamy has got, and Utoikamanu has got a lot more talent than some of the guys that Craig Bellamy has done that to. So you add that work ethic, and you put good players in and around these sort of talented players, and they just seem to shine.
Yeah, absolutely. You made mention of Valentine Holmes being told by the Cowboys that he has now permission to look at elsewhere. And the obvious one people have started jumping to is the Dragons, who are still to fill the void left by Zach Lomax's impending departure to the Parramatta Eels for next year. But I'm sure there'll be a number of clubs that'll try to make room for a player like Val.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because Val's a Townsville boy. I know they've been trying to instill a fair bit of that North Queensland culture in the Cowboys, and they're doing a pretty good job up there. But this must be a salary cap thing. I would imagine that Val is on a fair bit of money, and the salary cap restraints is it hits everyone. So I can only imagine that is the reason behind the club. Looking to move forward and get their cap in order. They've got the young centre, is it Purdue, that is
Jackson
coming
Purdue,
through as well.
Yeah.
He looks like a real talent, and some other young players in and around that development part of the game. And it's an interesting one because you think of the Cowboys and you think of Valentine Holmes, and they've obviously got some thoughts of their future, and they've told Val that he could look elsewhere, and if that's going to extend his time and work for both parties, well, that might just happen.
It's probably a few players due for an upgrade. Tom Dearden, Ruben Cotter as well, and we know about the likes of Helam Lukey and Jeremiah Nanai, and they've lost Kulakefu Funiaki to the Dolphins for next year. So people often say, don't they, why is he leaving or why are they letting him go? But it is so intricate, isn't it, putting an NRL squad of 30 together?
It's really hard, and even more so these days where the supply on great players is quite low. So everyone seems to be getting paid what they're worth or even that little bit more. So to keep the cap in check and on a line it's not an easy job to do. But for a guy like Valentine Holmes to be on the open market, that, like I just mentioned, there's not a lot of class players that come off contract. Usually they get tied up pretty quick, and for a guy that can play on the wing, in the centres, he's even played a little bit of fullback. I think he'd be a handy addition for any team. He's won a premiership. He's played for his state, his country. Experience is valuable for a lot of those clubs that are struggling down the bottom of the ladder. So be interesting where this goes. And the other thing is it's got to suit the player. When the player's got a contract, it's got to be mutual. The agreement has to be mutual, and both parties have to agree on it.
Just going back to one game from over the weekend, Billy, and it was an absolute ripper on Saturday night, Roosters and Manly. I'm sure Anthony Seibold, while disappointed with the loss, will be happy in some aspects of that game. It was of a very high standard.
It was, and to start with, the Roosters looked incredible to start the game. There was 3 intercepts in the second half that the Roosters would be disappointed about. It's interesting. You've got Anthony Seibold that would be disappointed with the result, but happy with his team's effort to get back in the game. And then flip side to Trent Robinson. he'd be happy with the result, but he'd feel like the team had lost. There'd be that sort of feeling where you're so dominant and you've put so many points on and you're in such a good position, but you just let the opposition back into the game. I think they'll learn a lot from that, the Roosters, and it's probably coming at the right time of the year to do that because, you won't get away with that in September when you're playing the top line teams. So it's probably a really good lesson at a good time of the year for the Chooks.
The Billy Slater Podcast. Time now for the Billy M Awards. Now, each week, Billy has his best team and player of the round. Billy, your most impressive team from round 21. Can't believe round 21. Wow.
Round 21. There's only 6 rounds to go. I'm gonna do this. I'm going to do the double in one because I'm going to give the team and the player at the same time because the player comes from the same team, and that is the Panthers. I thought the Panthers were ultra impressive, and the player is obviously their captain and halfback, Nathan Cleary. For him to come back and do what he did, not just personally in the numbers that he created, but the influence that he has on that football team. He doesn't go out there to create the big play. That's the greatest thing about Nathan Cleary. He doesn't go out there to create the big play. He goes out to accumulate all the little plays, and then in turn, that just so happens to be the big play. He's always in the game. He makes his teammates better. He makes his footy team better. And the Panthers were the team of the round because Nathan was the player of the round, to be honest. And he just keeps impressing. I liken it to a couple of years ago when he did his shoulder. He had all that time out and came back and won the premiership for the Panthers with a shoulder that needed to be reconstructed. He's done it again this year. Well, he hasn't won the premiership just yet, but he had that long time on the sidelines with a hamstring injury, and he's come back as good as ever. You can see how professional he is, and the Panthers are forced to be reckoned with again, unfortunately, for everyone else.
That's right. Can I just ask you a quick question on something that just came to mind then when you were talking about the patience that Nathan Cleary has? Obviously got the ability, if he wants to try to produce a big play every time, and it might work more often, but that patience has got me thinking about Wally Lewis, Andrew Johns, Darren Lockyer, these greats of the game. They just know when to, I suppose, to coin a phrase, when to hit that go button and to say, okay, now. It's
and
a
their
rare
go
trait.
button isn't anything beyond what their ability is. That's the thing with the great players. They don't overplay their hand. We see so many players when the pressure of the scoreboard gets to them, when the pressure of the clock that's running down gets to them, they'll overplay their hand and it'll turn against their team. These great players don't overplay their hand. I look at the grand final last year and Nathan Cleary's performance in that grand final. He was the difference in the end, and he won the game for his team. But it wasn't anything super special. It was just turning up the quantity of him in the game. He didn't do anything outside what he was doing the whole game and what he has done the whole season and his whole career. He just increased the amount of times he did it. The 40-20 was incredible, but then he just went at the defence more often. He created an opportunity for Moses Leota off just being at the defence and putting pressure on the defence more often. They created an error and he went through, and then his try at the end of the game wasn't anything special. It was just being at the defence more often and putting pressure on that defensive line. The great players don't play outside what they know works for them, and they don't feel the pressure of the scoreboard or the clock.
All right, well, yeah, they're just in sublime form, the Panthers, with Nathan Cleary. Back now, Billy, I've got some viewer and listener questions, and this one is from Eliza, and Eliza says, actually, it's nothing to do with rugby league. Billy, have there been any late nights for you watching the Olympics? Any event in particular that you're looking forward to watch that's coming up? That's from Eliza.
Yeah, thanks, Eliza. I actually watched a little bit of the Olympics last night with my family, just sitting on the couch, just flicking through, Stan and Channel 9 and watching a few of the replays and that sort of stuff. I got up early this morning and watched the replay of the 200-metre women's freestyle with Ariana Titmus and Molly O'Callaghan. They went head-to-head and, Ariana's had her gold medal times, and this was Molly's. So it's great to see the Aussies doing well. I do tune in every now and again. It's obviously on the other side of the clock for us, so don't get too many opportunities to watch it. But obviously supporting the Aussies. Harry Garside as well. Obviously unfortunate for him, and a real emotional and raw interview after his fight that he got. I won't say knocked out, but he got he finished his Olympic sort of dream, and just shows you how much goes into these athletes. And this is a once in 4 year opportunity, and some mightn't get another opportunity. So when it doesn't go their way, you can see the disappointment in them.
Yeah, very raw from Harry Garside, and he gave another interview as well with Carl Stefanovic on the Today Show that was highly emotional. So many great events to come, and of course you can see all the Olympics on 9 Now, on Stan, and it's all there. By the way, for rugby league fans, obviously watching the Billy Slater podcast, all of the NRL continues on 9 in the normal time slots as well. We've got hour-long previews on Go on Thursday and Friday night footy, and then the rugby league itself is on the main channel as per normal on Channel 9. So that's something good, including for us, Billy, a trip to Perth on Friday night.
We go to Perth. Yes, we do, with the Dolphins and the Roosters. This is an intriguing battle because the Roosters, the Dolphins are a little bit like the Roosters. They got off to a really good start, and then they actually lost the game. It was 14-0 just before half-time, and the Titans came back after a traditional Des Hasler spray at half-time, and they beat them. They're sitting in 8th place, the Dolphins. They can't afford to drop too many more games, and the Roosters, well, they're one of the hardest teams to play against because of their attacking sort of talent that they have in their team. So looking forward to this one over in Perth, and they've all got to make the trip over there, and it's a great battle.
Yeah, sure will be. Okay, Grant has sent through a question. Partly touched on this earlier, but get you to expand on it. Why are Melbourne consistently at the top of the table year after year? What do you put that down to after all these years? Most professional club in Australia. Billy, before you answer that, I love it usually December, but probably January or February, there's the article that comes out, or people start saying this is the year the Melbourne Storm will be on the slide. They've been saying it for about 15 years.
Yeah, whilst Craig Bellamy's still there, I don't think the slide will be too slippery. Grant, that's not Harry Grant, is it?
No, just Grant.
He's talking about his team.
No, there was good grammar here.
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer, but it's an easy question. That makes no sense, but I very rarely make sense. So, look, it's there's no secret recipe. There's no magic formula or magic dust or anything like that. It's pure hard work, and it's pure buy-in. There's obviously some things around the club that probably don't get the recognition. The development is one, and the recruitment is another one. Getting the right people to the club. You have a look at the talent. I just spoke about Ryan Pappenhausen, Harry Grant, Jerome Hughes. They all started the game, and then you had Cameron Munster, Suafalongo, and the want to be at the club. That's another thing. You've got a young kid by the name of Suafalongo that doesn't actually have a position in the team at the moment. He hasn't cemented a position in the team, but he just extended for another 5 years. That shows you that you've got one of the young stars, or one of the most talented players in the game, that could potentially be starting at another NRL club, wants to stay at the Melbourne Storm. And that's the environment that they set. It all starts with Craig Bellamy. Frank Panisi does a fantastic job as a head of football. And the club is just a wonderful place to be. It's out of the limelight down in Melbourne. They get to focus on their footy. They get to get away from the game. I was very fortunate, and I look back at my career and to think that I had that luxury. And sometimes you don't think it's a luxury, but I had that luxury of being away from the fishbowl of rugby league, and it's so good. Our game is so good, and it creates so much excitement. But as a player, it's so important just to focus on your role and the simple things in your game, and that allows you to do that. So, whilst it is many things that create sustained success, it all comes back to the coach, and he sets the standard. He sets the standard of the work ethic. He sets the standard of the effort, and that's every week. And that's why you see him up in the coach's box when they're 20 points in front and he's going off his brain. That's him, and that's what drives him.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Craig Bellamy. All right, great question there, Grant. Send through your listener questions. Email us at billyslaterpodcast@9.com.au. This is the Billy Slater Podcast. Thanks to Ram Trucks. Eats everything else for breakfast. Now, while we've just had round 21 of the NRL, we've just had round 1 of NRLW. There was an upset or two where in there, Parramatta beating Brisbane. That was certainly an upset. Raiders 32-12, fast start over the Tigers. But I know, Billy, you saw the game on Thursday night where the Knights edged the Roosters 12-10 in a real tough physical encounter. The Knights' defence was terrific. It was a great way to get the NRLW underway.
Yeah, keeping up with the NRL, the Olympics, and the NRLW. There's a lot of sport on your home of sport, Channel 9. But I watched that first game, and it just set the standard, didn't it? The first game always sets the bar, and the Roosters and the Knights have won the last 2 premierships. The Roosters are the competition favourites, and it lived up to that expectation. I think the quality of attack is going to improve as these girls get continuity with playing with one another, and the flow of the game becomes more. But the defence, there was some try-saving tackles. There was one just before half-time by the Knights that was incredible, and some of the defence was amazing. And we're only just kicking off the NRLW season, but that's going to culminate in a grand final alongside the men's on the last Sunday in the competition, and looking forward to it. They do a great job, the girls. They had to start with the State of Origin series, and now they're getting into their season. So, looking forward to watching more NRLW games.
Absolutely. We've got every game for you on 9 and 9 now as well. Round 22 of the NRL. We've touched on that important game on Friday night where the Dolphins play the Roosters. Thursday night footy on 9. The Cowboys, can they keep the momentum going? They make a trip to Leichhardt where the Tigers put 60 on them there last year. Then the Cowboys returned the favour a month later, if you remember. But they've got some positive vibes going into this one, the Tigers at home on Thursday.
Yeah, they do, but I just feel that the Cowboys are flying under the radar at the moment. They've won 4 of their last 5 games. They're sitting in a good position on the ladder. A couple of months ago, they were outside the 8, and they won't forget that moment down at Leichhardt. Although that they beat the Tigers convincingly not long after that up at home, and they beat them convincingly earlier in the season in a high-scoring game, they won't remember that. There will still be some scars and some motivation to go after this game down at Leichhardt. And I just get the feeling that this is the second last time that they'll be in Sydney before the finals. The last time will be the round 27, the last game against the Bulldogs at a core stadium, which is where the grand finals played. The 3 games in between that, they play at home. And although it's against some tough opposition, they're at home and they've got to buy in the middle of that. I just think it's the perfect run for the Cowboys to get down to Sydney, make a statement, get back home, have a month at home, where you've got 3 home games and then finish off the season against the Bulldogs down in Sydney. They have been flying under the radar for me. I'm not saying they're playing as good as some of the other teams in the competition at the moment, but they've certainly got that potential to really hit their straps at the right time with this draw.
You've got them finishing in your top 4, Billy, if you were to map it out now?
Maybe not top 4. I don't think top 4, but that doesn't really concern me. I know history says you've got to finish in the top 4 and that gives you the best chance or gives you a chance to win the premiership, but for me, it's about playing your best footy at the right time. Obviously, you've got to find yourself in the top 8, but if you're playing your best footy at the right time of the year, that is the priority for me. I've been in teams that have finished first, and 2 weeks into the finals, we were on holidays. So if you're not playing your best footy at the right time of the year, it doesn't matter where you finish. But playing your best footy, that is the priority. And if the Cowboys can do that, they'll be dangerous against any team.
Now, I can't wait for this on Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock at Belmore, our other Channel 9 game this week. It is Canterbury at home. If it's not officially sold out, then I'm sure it will be. Canterbury Bankstown at Belmore up against the Canberra Raiders, who are rediscovering some form. This will be a beauty.
It will be. And I look at these two teams and they're very similar. They win off pure grit and effort. They put the effort into that part of the game. And without being disrespectful, both of these teams do lack a little bit of top-end talent in key positions. Probably not top. It's actually lack a little bit of experience because they do have talent in their key position. I look at Ethan Strange and these sort of guys. Like I think they're going to be stars of the future, but they're still very young. It's a great battle. It's going to be at a great venue, which is going to create a great atmosphere, and we'll be there. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, can't wait for it. It's going to be a ripper. Well, Billy, we'll see you at the footy across the weekend. So much to look forward to for round 22 of the NRL and round 2 of the NRLW. Enjoy the rest of your week watching the Olympics and getting ready for the footy.
Thanks, Salty. I'll see you over in Perth.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait for it. I'm Peter Psaltis. That has been Billy Slater. This is the Billy Slater Podcast, and it is all thanks to Ram Trucks Eats Everything Else for Breakfast, and we'll be back for a new episode on Monday.